Hi, this is M with Black Salt Circle podcast. I've got to. Hi, Miss Julia. It's nice.
Hello.
Hello. How are you?
I'm doing awesome. How about yourself?
I'm doing pretty good. Got a lot of things done, so I'm pretty proud of myself. That's really rare for me. I'm usually multitasking multiple things at one time because I've got to go all the time.
How did the crock pot pork end up?
It did great. Came out great. I actually had an extra one because the other two I didn't think were big enough and would fit in my ginormous crock pot. They were more than enough. So I'm cooking a second one in the juices that I had. So there'll be a second one. So he'll be eating pork for probably the next week. So we'll get over that phase. We got to turn it around a little bit. So I ended up putting it on a baked potato.
Nice.
So a little simple baked potato, not a lot of stuff, so it didn't take away from the actual presentation from the pulled pork. It had plenty of flavor. So
that's awesome.
I just wanted to welcome you. I wanted to thank you also for being a part of the podcast. You're actually my second true guest.
Cool. I'm so honored. Thank you.
Would you like to introduce yourself to everybody?
Yeah. So, hi, everyone. My name is Julia Ratliff. I'm out of Richmond, Virginia, and I am the founder of the Times, which is a website and social, all dedicated to the paranormal and spreading the word about what people are doing in the paranormal community. We're still getting up and running too. We're pretty new, but hopefully in the coming months we'll kind of get our feet on the ground. So
you got this. I think you do a great job.
Thank you.
I love watching your content. I actually found you on TikTok and I wanted to follow fellow people that are like me. It makes things and it makes your heart a little bit more happier to actually see somebody that kind of is on the same realm as you are. I call myself the weirdo, which I embrace that with everything that I've got because, that's just who I am, and I won't change who I am for anybody. So It's just nice to see other people that are like-minded. We may not always agree with the same thing, but hey, we can come to a middle ground.
Yes, ma'am. I agree. By the way, just before we get into things, your glasses, you talk about like-minded. They're basically identical. I love them.
I absolutely love them. The bigger, the better.
Yes.
I like the big cat eyes. And they actually discontinued the frame that I used for about 5 years. It was by Kate Spade. And unfortunately, they just discontinued it. So I had to go on a massive search. And I have a tiny head area. So some big glasses don't look good on me because of the way my frame of my head is. So
gotcha. I wear the bigger glasses because it makes my big head look smaller. So.
I actually like the big ones. I like looking a little odd, so it kind of throws people off when I take them off every once in a while. They're like, "Oh, that's what you look like under there." Yeah, totally different person. But I've worn glasses since I was in 3rd grade. Nothing has changed other than I've got older, and sometimes my eyesight's a little bit quirky, but that's just getting older.
Yep.
But thank you very much. I appreciate it. What got you into this field? What was the stepping stone that started pushing you to get into where you are now?
Yeah. So, I've been interested in just everything paranormal since probably my early 20s, but I really, really got into it in 2021. I don't know exactly why, but I did. Maybe it was COVID and the pandemic, and I was watching all the shows and stuff like that. But I started actually getting out and investigating and doing events with various event companies in town. And then in early 2022, my father passed away. And he was really into cryptids and Bigfoot and paranormal stuff in general. And it kind of, I don't know, I started doing it in his honor, and it just kind of became natural, and it's what I love to do, and I feel like I'm channeling him when I do it. It's really fun. So
it's a part of basically trying to stay close to the ones that we love. And I wanted to send my sincere condolences. I know it's been a while, but it doesn't ease the hurt or the pain of it.
No, and actually, I have a story behind when I found out he passed. I was up in New Jersey at an investigation, a paranormal investigation at the Southern Mansion, and we were blizzarded in. I have some photos of that on my TikTok, but we were doing the investigation and I was like, okay, I've been blizzarded in. Should I go home? Should I stay? There was this like inner voice, intuition thing saying, you need to go home. You've got to go home. And I cleaned off my car. And then something told me to clean off the car of this other guy who I'd even said, you remind me of my dad. And I cleaned off his car too, got all the snow off. And then I drove home, and at the Wawa, when I stopped for gas, right as I pulled in, I got the call that he had passed away. It's like he was like, you gotta go, and anyways, so I was even doing paranormal stuff when I found out. So it's yeah.
That's a part of their way of trying to tell you, and I'm a big believer that people have gifts. It's a matter of if they're in tune with them, if it's always been there, because a lot of us humans don't really pay attention to things even in front of their face. The amount of times that I've proven, honestly, how much a human pays attention to things, the living, imagine what they would pay attention even in paranormal. Everybody's shoot it off, or they've been taught by whatever belief system that they were like organized will say that you're taught one way, you believe this, if you this is devil, this is the angels, this is this. No, it's not none of all the above. It's not always those things. There's things that do come in between those things. Yeah. And like we talked about earlier, there's a big fine line of what this is, what this is, what this is. And it's not one or the other. There is no gray in between when paranormal comes to stay. And especially like you were talking about your dad, and that you remember that feeling where it feels like you understand what I'm talking about, where it feels like something's bugging you, and you can't figure it out because your brain's somewhere else, and you don't stop for a minute. And it's like, that same thing happened like when I was talking to you about my grandmother that came down, my step grandma that came down from Wisconsin. She was from Wisconsin. My stepdad was originally from that area, which he had migrated to Texas many moons before. And he lived in Texas for 30 years, but dad would always go back up to see them before my grandparents died. My grandfather died, which was his pop. He died probably about a year before my grandmother did. But
sorry.
It's been a long time. It's one of those things where when you learn how to grieve, that grief process and that thought process doesn't go away. It just you learn how to live with it every day, because it's not going to change the fact of what it is. As much as we want them to come back, and it wouldn't have been fair. And I'm glad that she and him didn't suffer. But the thing that I felt was my brother's dad, I had taken him to go see his dad for a little bit, and I was staying over there with him. Not a big fan of his pop, but at the time, majority of the time, but he wanted to go over there, and I got a call, hey, you need to go back over to your mom's and your stepdad's. And boy, I made a fuss. And by the time before I got into the driveway, it was that thing I told you that hit you like a ton of bricks, that something was wrong before they could even open their mouth. I opened the door and I knew. I told her, I said, she's gone. And at the time, that was one of the most difficult things that I was trying to learn how to deal with, was the idea of death. I knew it would happen. I know we do not live forever, and there's always going to come a time, but I was 17 years old. I wasn't stupid by any means and stuff, but I remember before they could even get their mouth open, I ran out the door at the front glass door, just pulled it open, and I ran to the alleyway. The alleyway was my safe spot. When I told you that my parents never let me do anything. I didn't go hang out with friends. I didn't go to movies, nothing like that. I was the
Yeah.
only girl with their kids, and they were so strict on me. It was unbelievable. When I could barely go out to the backyard to do anything other than work and go to school. That's all I could do. So I didn't have a bunch of people that I was friends with. I had people that I grew up with and that I knew. Friendship for me is a very fine line when somebody talks about that, because I have very few and in between. So you can understand those times where you're by yourself a majority of the time, that you make it nice for you so that you don't drive yourself insane. And my place was, and just who I am is that I'm not a religious person. To make people understand, I if people want to call me a witch, that's what I am. I've never denied that,
Mm-hmm.
but I also believe in a higher being. But I always talk to the wind, and that was my place. And you get your middle ground and stuff. And when she passed, I ran to that alleyway where I felt comfortable, where it was quiet, and it was dead quiet. In Texas heat, I'm sure you've been down here before. Have you ever been to Texas?
I have actually never been to Texas. I want to go, but maybe not right now because it's on fire, apparently, or at least the Panhandle. But
the heat, there usually isn't a middle ground here. It's usually hot or gets into the cool season and stuff, and then it's just flaming Cheeto hot in here. And it was summertime. It was right before June. No, it was in June. And it was hot. It's humid, and that's the only thing that you felt. And I sat there for a minute, and I got real upset. Of course, when you're 17 years old and stuff, your brain, the way our brain basically evolves as we get older and making us understand. I understood a lot at that age, but there was a lot of that part of us that people can be smart as they want to mentally, but physically their smartness, it's two different wavelengths.
Right.
And I just sat there and I said, if you're here, I said, for the last time, I said, blow the wind, make the wind blow, do something so that I know you're here for the last time. And it was this gust of wind comes by and just goes across my face real slowly. It felt like a hand. I still remember that.
Oh, wow. That's really, that's making me tear up. That's really special.
And it was I knew from that end that she was okay. I mean, in my heart, I did too. When people that have gifts, I mean, that I've always had, and we talked about that. I've had them. I've had them for a long time now. Being able to control them in certain situations and issues and stuff, that's something that you evolve with too. Understanding yourself, understanding what you're doing with it. It's the same with paranormal. You have to understand the history. You have to understand very different points of venue and maps for you to understand what's going on in order to make a good hypothesis about how something is actually going, instead of doing willy-nilly and going through going through the numerous videos and stuff and just saying that's paranormal, that's paranormal, that's paranormal. No, not necessarily. It isn't.
Yeah, when I was basically my whole life, I always thought that, I believe that people have abilities, but I myself, I was like, I've never experienced anything. I've never felt anything really, but I've come to realize that I have been, and I just haven't really been in tune with it. And I've noticed that my eyes will well up, which I don't feel like I'm going to cry necessarily, but I'll get misty when I'm investigating, or when this feeling of, misty eyes, and my hair will stand up on my arms. And I've come to realize that that's me sensing something that I can't really see with my eyes. Right. But it took me 38 years to figure that out. So, yeah.
Well, making heads or tails of things and stuff, your dad's always around you.
Yeah.
No matter how much that we get so engulfed in what's going on in our life or the stress, or if people are going through depression moments and manic moments and stuff, that we fail to see those things when it was there the whole time. And I've had those aha moments like, what the fuck was that? You know? And then it takes me a week or two and it's like, I know what that was. And it's not always simply a person. It's a thought process. It's a thing. It's something that you're trying to figure out, and just get heads or tails sometimes when you just get to that point, because we do get to that point at some time. I just feel like the best paranormal researchers and stuff like you, there's several that I've worked with. Actually, I actually worked for one of the guys as BDRP, DDoS. He's real prominent around y'all's. I have some girls around y'all's area that know him, but prominent around Oklahoma, Louisiana, around the southern part of the area. I follow some pretty good ones that I've been following for years. I actually worked with him and ran a lot of his work and his pages, and then I did back research. Like I said, I'm an introvert, so this is a lot for me to put myself in this platform where I want to talk to others and make people feel like they have a place to go. And it's a really hard, I'm going to tell you, it's hard to try to get people to open up.
Well, you're doing a great job, because I feel like I've known you forever, and I've been talking to you for not that long. So, but yeah, talking about the research, doing these pieces for social for the website, I'm really loving it. Like I was a biology major in school, and so I did like scientific research back then for papers and crap like that. But I hadn't really in my adult life done anything like this, and it's really fun. So I also kind of consider myself an introvert. My career has been in nonprofit management and fundraising, so I had to build relationships with people. But that's just what I do. But then I go home and I'm like, I'm so tired. It took like all my energy, you know. So yeah, I get the whole introverted thing for sure.
That's part of people that are empaths, is that an empath actually brings in a lot of people's energy, unwanted energy, all their havoc, all of everything. And so that's why I actually help others that have gifts kind of understand them the same way that I'm going to do with the paranormal. What I've done with the paranormal, the way that I've done with cryptid research, is that you have to understand what you're going through in order it makes your inward calm down a little bit if you understood what was going on, instead of it being that shock factor. And it's all about development, even as a small child. And I talk about the way people's reactions are to the cryptid world and the paranormal world when they go through these things and not understanding. You got to understand, if somebody saw something at 5, the way that they thought it may have been scary, may be different when they were 12 when they saw it again, or when they evolved and they're 20 years old and they see it in a different way. It doesn't bother them as much. Is not having the psychological grasp of conversation where you can say those things and try to make people understand. And I understand with kids, I talk to a lot of people that are in the cryptid world and stuff. Some of them are big names. Some of them are just everyday, like I am and you are. That's all I want to be. I am not looking to I'm just, if this goes the way that I want it, which I'm hoping it does, and it probably will, I'm out here just for the people, and it's not a pissing contest on who's the better researcher, who's the better field researcher or anything. I don't give a shit. I really don't. Yeah. You go do your thing, I go do my thing. We can meet in the middle and we can exchange what ideas that we think, or what we've got going on. And like you said, you did a lot of papers in college too, because of the major that you had. I was a nursing major. So yeah. And I worked in the nursing field for a long time. So you get used to working and doing doctor's notes and nursing notes and verbiage and how you state something. And I catch myself, even though I've been out of it for about almost 7 years now, I removed myself from that environment. I absolutely love patient care, and it had nothing to do with being an empath too. It was all the political stuff that was around patient care and people not being taken care of, and
Yeah.
seeing people say things and do one and another, and it was out of my control. It was another thing that would get so angry, and I don't know what it was in the universe that I had found the answer, and I was like, I shaped up. I was so angry at other people about it, and something popped up in my mind and was like, you're only responsible for what you do in that patient care. You're not responsible for what they do.
Mm-hmm.
And I made peace with that. But it didn't mean that I needed to go back to that environment to keep mentally exhausting myself.
What environment did you work in mainly? Where was it, like
I worked in hospitals.
hospitals?
I was med surgery and telemetry. I worked in a smaller hospital, a very haunted, smaller hospital.
Oh, wow.
I was the hospital I was actually born in.
Very neat.
And that's a story in itself, which saddens me because they actually bulldozed it about 6 or 7 months ago.
Yeah, I had heard a story on NPR. I don't keep up much with that, but I sound like my mother when I say that. I heard a story on NPR about smaller hospitals going under and being replaced by the large conglomerates and stuff, and how it's pretty sad, especially for areas that aren't super populated. Those small hospitals have meant a lot. Yeah, and they're going away.
In that general area, there went nowhere for them to be going because it was 3 floors, like from the base up. I worked on the 3rd floor. So I worked on the floor with my mom, who was also a nurse. I worked for 5 years opposite of her shift because the rules and regulations, which I understand that because I think it's a conflict of interest. In order for me to be professional and her to be professional, we need to not be together.
It probably also sounds, just from what I've gathered, you probably wouldn't want to work with her anyway.
When I worked with her, that was a different person.
Was it?
What home and her separating her work, her professionalism was absolutely amazing.
That's awesome.
One of the best nurses in the world. I may not like who you are and you act like an ass, but it does not stop me from loving her. I'm going to make that clear. I love you, but I love you from a distance.
I could never work with my mom. I love her to death, but yeah.
Oh, she was fun.
We took a trip together in 2018, her and me and my 2 kids. My husband had to work, so he stayed behind, but we took a road trip to Alaska from Richmond. Nice. It was so fun, but yeah, we were seriously about to kill each other after that. There was one point where we just couldn't talk to each other for hours on end, and yeah, if we get that bad after a month, I can't imagine. So kudos to you.
It was just, she would tell me stories, and this is the same woman that pretended like she didn't think that ghosts didn't exist, that it was a demon or something. No, it wasn't a fucking demon. It's a spirit. And then she comes back another time. She was the second one that I went up to after I was probably about 25 or 26. And I'm sitting there, and at the time, I went out and had a cigarette with her at one time. I don't smoke like that anymore, but I just puff on my smoke. So if you see me puffing, that's me.
Okay.
But
I did quit a couple of years ago, and I haven't looked back, but I've done it on and off my entire adult life. So
it was probably the only scapegoat in between all the depression and your manic moments and slowly trying not to choke people out,
Yeah. Right.
But we went out there and we were talking and stuff, and just randomly I'm sitting there and she's like, you remember that time when y'all were all working at one time and your stepdad was out of town She goes, there was one night there was something in that house that we lived in. And the house was only built in the 1960s. Nobody died in it or anything. And the land was just like I said, anything's been built on land like that that's got cemeteries, whether it was, you know, Native American burial ground, or because the majority of the area that I'm from is called Waxahachie. It's a whole mouthful. And the Tonkawa Indians were the ones that were native to that area. There was a lot of Cherokee that came through, a lot of Apache, Chiricahua Apache, a lot of bands of Native Americans came through the area of Texas that I was from, and they basically almost wiped out all of that tribe.
Oh, wow.
And a lot of them were pushed up into Wichita Falls. Wichita Falls basically had a reservation at one time. It doesn't exist anymore. So the Tonkawas went up north more towards, I think they were going up towards Wisconsin, up in that area, Ohio area, from the research that I've done. Because I take it back all the way to the microfiche, because that's the way I like to do it. So
you're old school.
Yes, because I still know how to use those things, and I really wish that they would do it. So it'd be more informational if we did that instead of everything. A majority of that stuff that they do to libraries is they damage it or they get rid of it. So there's no documentation of anything.
Yeah, a lot of places are digitizing that stuff now, right?
Yes, everything is almost digitized, because I still use my context clues and do all that, because that was the closest thing that I knew that I could get to it. And as much as I use technology is not my go-to, man, because these people are not going to know what the hell to do with themselves if a grid went down and they lost everything. We've got people that walk around and think that their food technically just comes from the store and it doesn't come from a farmer. So those are people that we're working with right now with that brain capacity and that type of thinking, that we're all fucked. So, but that she had told me, she's like, yeah, I had to leave that night. She goes, I waited until I knew one of y'all were coming home, because I couldn't be in that house because it got so heavy in there. And I'm sitting there looking at her like the Beetlejuice scene with the shrunken head, and the dude can't move his mouth. And I'm like, that whole spiel when you try to help get somebody to listen to you that never really did, and now all of a sudden you want to have a conversation about this shit. And I've been telling y'all. And she's like, well, y'all practice. You better be right with anything. Ma'am, you haven't stepped in a church since God knows when. I don't even think you know what deity that you want to look at. I said, don't give me a lesson on what I believe in and what I know. I said, because I guarantee you I know a lot more than you do. Just because you're older than me don't mean jack shit.
Yes, that's very true.
It's about doing your research. And it's about understanding and things that you've been through. A lot of these people, like I told you, they have a shining light. People have a beacon of light, and spirit will follow them anywhere that they do, because their light shines so bright, and it attaches themselves to it. When these people are puzzled why their house is all of a sudden haunted, and it was built in 2020, and they can't figure out what the hell is going on there, let's do Blue's Clues. What's going on? This is why it's in depth and important when you go in an investigation, when you're going to actually help people, that you get information from everybody that's involved with that party.
Absolutely. You want to have your ducks in a row before you get into that, especially when you're doing something private. Oh, where'd you go?
I'm right here.
Oh, there you are.
Oh, dear, I had to slip off for a minute.
Oh, no, you're fine. You're fine. Yeah, 100%. Yeah. Do your legwork and talk to people, and don't go into it blindly, for sure.
On your investigations, how many people do you usually have going with you, or are you pretty independent when you go to your different places of research?
Yeah. So most of the time I go with groups of people. in kind of like pre-planned events. I have occasionally gone by myself, but that's usually, it's not because I've been called to do something by somebody. I will rent out rooms in haunted hotels and stuff like that. There's one place called the Dunlora in Mineral, Virginia, that I've been a couple times. Belgrove, Plantation, and King George, I've done the same thing. Just rent out a room and go and investigate on my own. So yeah, I like to take the kids with me sometimes when I can. Not every place will allow that, but my son loves it. Especially my son. My daughter, she's kind of ambivalent, but I also find that activity will kind of follow him. He's a little. I've had a psychic tell me before that he's a star child. I don't know if um, I don't know enough about that to really.
Star children are a lot. They're different. They're very different.
He is so
like indigo. They're not atypical. A lot of children have gifts.
Yeah.
And I know I press and I talk about this a lot. I have to because it actually makes sense. Because no, I don't. There are times the senses that I have, and I promise you, I'm not full of shit. Like I talked about, I don't personally I don't take anything from anybody, but I use the gift that I have to be able to go in the investigations that I have. Mm-hmm. So I trust my gut.
Yeah.
So when I feel things are off, if I feel something's negative, I know what direction it is. I can actually fit them. Mm-hmm. You know, I feel them, and it's just an essence and stuff, or a bad taste in my mouth, or what direction. And sometimes I'll actually see them. Mediums are more the ones that see constantly. Like I said, your sun's light shines bright.
Yeah. Activity seems to follow him wherever he goes. We were at St. Albans Sanatorium in Radford, and yeah, it's just constant activity right around him, and followed him up the stairs, and like it was just insane. And yeah, he really gets a kick out of doing that. So, and it just in general in life, he's very empathetic. He, cries at the drop of a hat, just sweet. He's 11, and he'd probably hate it if I told anyone this, but before he goes to bed, he still likes to jump into bed with me and my husband and snuggle for like an hour or two, and then he'll fall asleep, and then we take him to his own bed. Like he's just, it's sweet. So
mine were total opposite. Mine are good kids. They were really good. My daughter's the one that she's always seen when she was born, and I can't find her baby book around here. I don't know where the hell it went, but some of the first pictures of her when I brought her home, there were orbs around her.
Oh wow!
And I mean, they were in the whole vicinity of her being, and I kept that picture for years, and I wish that I would have got like an extra copy, but that was back in 2003, where they still had wind up cameras, and you had to be rich to have a digital camera. Yeah. And at the time I was starting all over with a brand new child on my own. So it wasn't, life has changed a lot since then, but she was always, we went, the first part of her life, it was just a mess at time. And I went through a horrible ordeal with, and I'm just going to be, he's sitting in prison now. So where he should have been 18 years ago. Actually more than that, because she's 20. She'll be 21 actually in the mid part of this week.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
Happy birthday. That's awesome.
But I was upset because somebody had basically, it wasn't that I didn't understand it, I was pissed of anything. When I cry, I'm pissed emotionally. Mm-hmm. And with her, I was crying a lot, and I couldn't figure out why that baby was crying. She cried for a week with me because, I thought I was ruined, and anything that something saved me in her. And I couldn't figure out why she was crying so much. She had colic real bad up until the time she was probably about a year old. And that was through the formula changes, and she had slow bowel, and she just couldn't get comfortable. But that week, I was like, I've done everything. She's fed, she's burped, she's had Milcon, you know, I've done everything but roll her up like burrito. We've already done that. She didn't like that either. I'm just like, well, what the hell is the deal here? And mom had made a really good point, is that she felt me. She goes, watch you stop being upset over somebody that's not worth a shit, which she was right about that. Mm-hmm. And I knew that. But I was upset that he was getting away with shit, and we were sitting here picking pennies and having to go stay with my parents for a little bit until I got back on my feet. And I was 20 years old. I was barely 20. And when I stopped to think about what was going on, and I was like, I'm not crying over this bastard or anybody ever again like this, ever. And when I brought it up and everything, that kid just stopped crying.
Yeah, they can really sense the emotions, right? Yeah.
Let's fast forward to now, to these days, when she knows that I don't feel good or something's wrong, she'll call me. She's like, Mom, what is wrong? And I won't tell her because she's a very big empath. She always has. She always knew when something was going on with me. I didn't have to tell her, because there's some things that your kids don't need to know.
Yeah. Oh, I agree. Yeah, it sounds like it runs in your family, in your genes. So
sorry, I got a good friend, and he's pretty much a good friend of mine, outer space. Motherfucking boogeyman is one of my good friends. So he's a really good person. He's actually got good, he's probably would be a really good asset. He does a lot of paranormal investigations. He helps back up and do security for different paranormal investigators. He's actually a demonologist too.
Oh, wow. And what did you say his name was? I'm sorry.
It's Eric. Just call him Eric. He trips me out. He's really fun, and he's very intelligent. And that's one of my biggest things, is there's been so much of a lack of intelligence and stuff, is that I don't have a reverse on my reaction to people. It usually just comes out right there.
Yeah. I've been told that it's really hard. Like I can't hide emotions in my face. So if I feel something, you will know.
I think you're, in all honesty, I think you're probably the PR version of me. I am not there. When I go off, and I have to ask people, and it's not always a good thing, with the urgency of what the fuck is wrong with you, and where do you get this shit from, and where were your facts, and did you even bother to look at timestamps and labels and areas and stuff like this? It's like, come on, are you kidding me? I've gotten better with it, and now that I've joined the TikTok crew, my daughter actually pushed me towards that about a couple of years ago. And I was like, oh, I don't want to do this shit. And then I was like, okay, I'm hooked. I'm finding better storylines like your stuff, where we're finding different storylines. We're learning things historically, what happened in the area. Why is this going on in here? I like listening to those things, because that's what I do when I do my dungeon research. Dungeon research is my stuff by myself, where I just break out all my journals over the since I was probably about 12 years old. I've got journals after journals, and some of them are half written in and with half little things in them and stuff that I've used over the years. I've got tons of these.
Oh, wow.
I've got boxes of these, of writing and stuff for years, of different places that I've actually been, different experiences. There's some that I don't document because I remember them enough that I don't want to write that on a piece of paper, because the intention that's on it, just the way that I believe in stuff, especially with the way I am. So there's some stories that don't need to be written on pieces of paper, but I have told him Eric knows one of my worst one of the worst ones that I ever had, and it was a place in Oklahoma. And I can't even remember the damn name of that town, but I know it was by Durant, Oklahoma. Oklahoma is a shithole. I'm just going to tell you.
I have not been there yet, but I will take your word for it.
There's pretty places, but a majority of that place is fucked. Anything in the South is usually fucked because of the Confederacy that came through. All the demise and the slaughtering of both sides. I'm not picking either side. I'm neutral. I don't give that, but that's why a lot of that activity that picks up. But it's like something focal on Oklahoma, and every part of Oklahoma that I've ever been to has just been complete shit.
Well, have you ever been to Richmond, Virginia before? Because we were the capital of that Confederacy, and it definitely has an energy to it. Yeah, if Oklahoma is fucked, then Richmond is already in the shitter. So
I think I don't know, in between that and things that I've heard, I would love to go visit, but that's like the epitome of somebody wanting to come and visit Waxahachie, and I'm like, why? Love of God, why? I mean, other people that enjoy history, I can see that part of it, but a part of me is like, turn around, like the dude on Jeepers Creepers 2 that's trying to turn them back around because Jeeper Creepers come in and stuff, and just go back.
There's really cool history here. It's a really beautiful place too. It's just it is very heavy, and going to some of those places that I've documented on TikTok, and everything around here has something to do with the Civil War, and it's bloodshed and just sadness and segregation, and it's sad. It's really sad, and there's people here that want it to still be like that, and that's even sadder. So yeah,
I'm one of those people that's neutral. Right is right and wrong is wrong in the way that I look at things, and that's why I don't go into politics with people, and because I'm not going to argue with you.
I agree. I just kind of keep my mouth shut.
Like even with the Confederate flag, it was supposed to be a Southern flag. It was adopted by the KKK. And it turned into something that was a fucking nightmare. Mm-hmm. So they overran them. Do I think it was right about the slaves? No, I don't. But I don't think that other people should pay for what somebody did over a century enough ago. I see no relevance in that. Yeah. Is that you need to pick a point in life where you need to pick up and do better. And there are people, not all white people are bad. Not all black people are bad, and not all Hispanics are bad. Not any of the culture, races, mixed or not. It's not a pissing contest. In the last 5 years, I've seen more hate than all combined of when those things were happening.
Yeah.
In history. We're going by history. You can't change. And tearing something down is not going to change the history of a place, because the ghosts are still here.
Yeah.
They'll always be here. And I don't think that all spirits are trapped. They're not all trapped. Some are. And like I said, hopefully to have you on another podcast with me at some point where we go through Paranormal 101 and explaining the do's and don'ts. And Eric's came up with a lot because of his research and us doing this for years. There's do and don'ts that you don't need to do, and provocation is not one of them when it's with spirit, if you do not know what the hell you were dealing with. Yeah. Because if you get your ass whooped, I'm going to laugh.
And I mean, also, they were human beings. They are human beings, just on the other side. Treat them with respect like you would anybody else. I don't understand why people do that. I really don't.
But a lot of it's ignorance, and because I want to try to prove something. What are you trying to prove? What's going to happen when you actually prove something? Or do you want to meddle? What are you going to go and hurt it? And that's the same thing with the cryptid world. I know you push more towards the paranormal side of it, but the cryptid world I've been in for a long time, and my focal study was a lot on the dogman and stuff, and all these people. Well, I was just scared for my life. I thought it was going to murder me. Well, how are you telling the story if you thought that it was going to murder you? Let's be logical here. when you're telling these stories. You can tell people that you are in shock. I didn't know these things existed. I didn't know what the hell I was looking at, or I knew what I was looking at, but I was pretending that I hoped that wasn't what I was seeing. Not making the over dramatics of something like it was going to kill you when it did absolutely nothing, but in majority of the time they intimidate. Now, I'm not saying that there's been cases where people went missing and this was the issue that went around here, but I'm not going to blame one thing for a whole problem.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I totally agree with you.
And I mean, I've seen both sides of the fence, the paranormal aspect of it. Hell, I lived in we had a haunted duplex when my daughter was really, really, really little. She was probably about 3 to 4. It was one of the prettiest duplexes, and it was out in the country, and there wasn't a lot of neighbors. So if somebody's cruising down the back, they're up to no good, or they lived out there.
Yeah.
And my ex-husband worked on oil field for a long time. He was offshore, so he was gone constantly in Louisiana. So it's just me and her. And there was something on the property that was very old, and it had been there for a long time. And it got me to the point where, I don't know if you've had anxiety and you get jitters and you can't sit down for a minute and you can't figure out what the hell it is, but I know what direction it's coming from and it needs to fuck off right now. And I know you're here, but you need to go.
Yeah.
If you do not have any bearable around me, and that's why I insist on intent. Get the fuck away from me. You're out of your bounds. And it got so bad that I moved my daughter out of her room, and we would sleep in the living room every night. Because at the time I was on a good schedule with the hospital where I would work 3/12s and I was off with her 4 days. She never had to go to daycare. She went to my mom. Me and my mom had our shifts totally opposite of each other. It was very rare that we worked together on the same shift. But I picked my mattress up out of the back of my room and I pulled it up into my living room, and that's where I put me and her right there in our area, because I felt like I was being watched by the back window every night. Out of my window.
That's rough.
My skin was crawling, and it takes a lot for my skin to crawl like that.
Yeah.
And I'm like, nope, no, And then one night she said, my ex-husband used to scratch on her window. She had one of them sliding windows, same house, sliding window. And he'd go out there and mess with her. So he'd go and put his hand on the window and scratch across it. It didn't bother her. She'd been seeing stuff for a long time. And she comes up to me one day and she's like, Mom, there were people at my window. And I'm like, do what? What'd you say? I heard you fine the first time, but we're going to repeat this. There were people by my window, and I had her draw. And God, I wish I had that picture still, because I kept everything she ever had, anything that she drew, and that's just the mom and me, even though I subsided off of that when she got into 6th grade, 5th grade. But she drew this picture, and it's people. They look like Bob's Burgers people. It's for Bob's Burgers. And I'm like, okay, yeah, we're not doing this. I waited till my ex-husband come home when he came up from relief, because he would only come home for a week, and then would have to leave for like 2 to 4 weeks at a time, because he can maneuver his schedule so they would allow him a little bit more time at home, but still have equivalent. I'm like, she drew this. She's like, what the fuck is that? I said, it's exactly what it looks like. I told you there's stuff out here. He had a birthday party, and I've got pictures of spirit and a flame around them, something behind them. It's on an older computer of mine that I can't open right now, which I'm going to have to find somebody that can open my laptop without clearing my whole drive. Yeah. So I can pull those pictures off. orbs everywhere. You could see things in the tree line. There's a tree line that was really close to the house. There was our duplex. The lady that was on the other side of it, she had, I don't know how the hell she did it, but she had 4 big ass dogs in her house. And it's a duplex. So they're long and it's still a duplex. It's not a house.
Yeah.
And there was one girl on the other side of us that we all kind of, in the circle that we lived in, a group of people that lived in there, we all took care of each other. So I had issues right by them woods. I could feel it standing there. And there was, her dogs were going ape shit. And you thought the wind blew and they would go ape shit, but their barks were different. An animal's reaction is totally different. A bark is really different. If you've been around your animal for a long time and stuff, the reaction time is different. It's like, okay, there's something wrong. So we have to pay attention. That's why I tell people, when your kids tell you something and when your animals act, I said, I'm going to trust them over a human being anytime.
Yeah, I have a beagle. She barks at everything, so it's hard to tell.
Yeah, we have a beagle too. My mom had one, and boy, she was something else.
Yeah.
Big in trouble.
Yeah, constantly eating our food and barking all the time. But yeah, our cats are good gauges of stuff like that. So yeah. Yes, ma'am.
So so you said you got more into paranormal when it wasn't based on any kind of experience personally. You just started.
Not necessarily. I honestly don't. In 2021, I started getting more involved and intrigued by it, and there's not one particular thing that really set me on that path. No, but the passing of my father did really kind of ramp it up quite a bit. And then so I last year or this year into last year, I was working with the Salvation Army as a development director and doing communications and fundraising and stuff like that. It was a really super awesome job, and I love the organization. But I just kept having this nagging feeling that I needed to. It's one of those intuitive feelings, right? That this is what I need to be doing, and I have all these skills that I've gotten from these various roles and stuff, and I'm like, I'm just gonna put it to use and do my own communications and my own stuff, and I'm gonna be girl boss, #girl boss, and and do this. And I'm really excited. Right now, this is my full-time gig. It might not be forever, but I'm very lucky to have a husband that has a decent paying job. So
It's really good, and it gives you time that building up your skill, that you don't have to totally, if you get to a point where you want to go and do something else, that you could do it part-time, but even do it in the closing behind on your own for your personal stances and stuff. Is that I like how you think, is that you went into it being open-minded. As to one time you didn't really think anything of it all. It wasn't that you thought heads or tails, is that you just weren't interested in it at some point.
Yeah, so about a year ago, early 2023, I had started thinking that this was something I wanted to do, but I was like, I can't. I just can't. I'm just going to put it off. And then I got this other job, and I was happy. But it's just always that's something that just kept, it was just there, and I just couldn't say no to it anymore, and I took the plunge. So here I am. and I'm loving it. And the community has been awesome. I've found that there is a bit of drama and competition, that it's kind of high schooly and cliquish.
Yes, it is.
But part of my goal with this is to kind of bridge that divide and be that kind of like, I want to be the place where people can go to talk about what they're doing and to share other people. I mean, I just want everyone to be friends. I'd love to help facilitate that. So
you're the one that wants to be friends with everybody. I know that you've got a really good heart. If you look on the side, on your right-hand side, there's a chat box should be in your area. You can activate it because Eric asked a question of you. And it said, ask her if she knows about binary sounds or shepherd's tones.
Oh, okay. I see now. I actually do not. I know about binaural. I'm gonna mispronounce it. Binaural like music and sounds that are used to get people kind of in like a meditative state.
Mm-hmm.
But I've not heard of shepherd's tones. No, I apologize about that. Yeah, you can fill me in though, please. I would love to learn about that.
I'm gonna let him take that one. It takes years, and like you said, there's a lot of people that are in this type of field. Is I'm not, like I said, and like you, I stay neutral and I stay out of it. I don't care what I do with my podcast. Is just what it is. I'm not here to get a bunch of likes from people. I just want people to enjoy themselves in our conversations, even educating one another about things. In group aspect is that I don't want any of the BS. I don't want any of it. I don't want any part of it. And I'm a little bit more mouthy when it comes to stressing that, because people don't know boundaries and they think that they can walk on folks, and they're not going to do that.
Yeah.
So I stand up for other people in the community. And for me is that, okay, did he responded to you?
Yeah, I see. Yeah, thanks, Eric. I appreciate that. I'm going to do a little more research on that, maybe make a video. That's cool.
That may be a focal point that you can do.
Yeah.
An experiment.
I'm going to make a note. See, there's my pen. I'm going to write that down.
That's why I always have 20 notebooks around me. I'm in a firm believing when you go into research that everybody plays their part, even if it's something that you don't agree in. It helps somebody that's very knowledgeable about a certain thing will help you get the answers that you need.
Yeah, I'm very quick to say that I mean, I don't know everything, obviously, and I'm open to learn, and that's what I think that's another part of my goal here is to learn things myself and then share what I've learned with people. Like, I mean, I haven't known lots of the things that I have posted. I didn't know about ahead of time, and I did, like you, I do some research, and I'm like, oh wow, this is awesome. I'm gonna do some more research, and then eventually it creates enough to share. So, yeah, life is a journey of knowledge gaining and learning, right?
You're doing a good job. And there really isn't, besides the basic facts of no intimidating, don't sit there and speak through everybody's, when you're doing a recording session and you've always got one person that you see on them ridiculous ass shows where they're speaking through it. And like Eric had made a mention of that about a week ago and stuff, is to shut the fuck up when you're doing that kind of audio. It's hard enough to hear them on your own. And with you going back over video and monetizing things and going over those, don't talk through those times. There'll be a time for you to talk. You can make gestures, but not going, did you see that? Well, no, I didn't. And did you hear that? No, I couldn't hear over your big ass mouth. Can you hush up? Sometimes studying does not mean that you have to verbalize.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, you also want to avoid putting the seed of, I heard something. That means you had to have heard something too. And then kind of that whole group think effect. You start you plant that seed of activity when maybe there wasn't something there. I don't know. Yeah,
I
I
agree.
agree.
I
When I go on when I go on investigations, I tend to be the person that I have my voice recorder, I have, EMF, whatever, but I tend to just sit by myself in the dark room. Like there'll be the group of people doing stuff in the other room, and I'll just sit in the other room and just like sit and listen, right? that's that's
usually
it. And that's when when you're in tune and you're kind of paying attention, that's when stuff happens. And
those are
you see.
usually the people that actually get legitimate actual info, and that's those are the people that you want to stay by. The ones that are quiet, the ones that don't say a lot, because if you're going to act like an idiot, I'm not going to be a part of this. That's why I don't do really good with groups of other people. It's not a control issue. It's that I don't want you fucking up my database. So I can do this on my own. I did this on my own. There's been very few times where I brought somebody with me. Now, if it's in a larger area and stuff, I don't recommend people go by themselves unless you're very experienced enough to be able to deal with the bad and the good bits with it. You have to go into this atmosphere understanding that you're going to be uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
It does not go away, and it's about how you process something. You can think it's cool on TV and stuff, and then you go, what I press people to do and that what I want my followers to understand, and I would like your followers to understand, you go into this field, don't be trespassing on people's property.
Yeah. Oh, that's like the first rule. Always get permission
You don't
from the ghosts or from the spirits, from the owners of the property. Just always ask permission.
it's not a free for all, even though there's some people that sneak up on other people's property and stuff. Just don't get caught doing it. But I'm not pushing people, and I want that as a disclaimer, because we live in a world where people were eating Tide Pods. So you have to tell them that they're not. So you have to tell people these things, like you're talking to your kids.
Yeah.
Don't do this. There's a reason why you don't, or they'll find out the hard way. And people are not going to be convenient. It's not proper, and it's, in my opinion, but people are going to do whatever the hell they want to do. They've shown it since the beginning of time, and it hasn't really worked in their favor for them.
I agree. Someone who talks really well about that wasn't proper English, was it? I don't know. Who writes about kind of ethics and investigations and treating spirits like human beings and stuff like that is Amy Bruni. She has a book that came out a couple years ago. It's awesome. I can't remember the title of it right now, but she's all about humanity in the investigation and ethical investigating it. It's really good. So highly recommend it.
He is probably one of by far the best medium intuitives that you could ever see that wasn't bullshit on those shows. She was on Dead Files. So Dead Files is one of my favorite. I actually follow Steve DeChevy, and I talked to him a couple of times, which is really neat. He's really cool. He's a very down-to-earth person. And I'm pretty sure at one point, not speaking for him, you have no idea how many times, like police, anybody that's blue collar, any medical workers, a lot of them have a lot of experiences.
Oh yeah. My brother, he's not in the medical or nursing field, but he used to be an officer in the Navy, and he flew fighter jets. And this isn't necessarily like ghosts and stuff, but he's talked about the like UFOs that he's seen and stuff like that. I like that. That's real. And I believe my brother, because he's pretty straight laced. So
I'm telling you now, a lot of them, in military, anybody that served or anything. My husband was in the military for 21 years. He was an airborne paratrooper for the United States Army. So that was the majority of his career. And the places that they've been, and when I go do research, I have to mix it up a little bit, because there's so many genres areas and stuff, like military stories, blue collar stories from cops. I've heard logger stories about cryptid many, many logger stories, especially in the area, because that's their home. You know, those are where cryptids go. They go into places that are heavily wooded where nobody can get in there because they've had to hide themselves since the beginning of time. I mean, it even talks about it. If people want to talk about the Bible, if they want to push that in there, they talk about things like that. These creatures do exist. These things do exist. And the mannerism of the way that you're taught, of course, they sat there and told everybody, every woman was a damn witch because you had a birth, you like stones and you worship the earth, the same thing. And it went into a whole spiel of a pitchfork. I call them the pitchfork community. You know, they still do that in this time. Only thing is they're not lighting somebody on fire. But you know, women were witches because they practiced differently. You were supposed to believe in this and you're supposed to believe in that. That was man's issue. Mm-hmm. If we're talking about people that are God, I have no problem with God. The problem is that if people want to go and spit out facts and they want to spit out chapters and stuff, and half of them don't understand what the hell they're talking about. And they're the same people that are ragging everybody else's ass, and they sit in a pew on Sunday because they think that they can get washed of whatever they did during the week.
Yep. I hear you. Yeah. It's yes. I don't know how to respond to that, but yes, I totally understand what you're talking about. So
yeah, I'm not down in somebody because they believe in God. That's their prerogative and stuff. It's when you go outside the bounds of bashing and judging other people when God told you not to do that. That you do not serve the right to sit there and tell anybody where they are. And he wasn't hiring when he made that. And you've got to, when I tell you, you got to go back in history, even with the Bible and stuff, how many times has it been rewritten in man's word to justify the way that they run things here? Oh, it says it in the Bible. No, it didn't. You put it there so that you can justify whatever the hell you're doing to people.
I mean, the Bible, I don't want to get too much into it personally, but it's I mean, it really is like, it's just a collection of stories, and they were written by men, and everything is filtered through.
It's like playing telephone.
The brain, right? It really is just a collection of stories. When I was in college, you know, I was a biology major, and I very briefly switched to a religious studies major because it interested me so damn much. And then I was like, I'm just never going to graduate. So I switched back to biology and ended up finally graduating. But because that kind of stuff really interests me. But it's cool to see all the different religions and how they overlap. And the stories are, I mean, they're all
the same,
so similar. They're all based on basically the same premise. So
I mainly use love and not to overstep, and it's something I'm not in the mannerism to make people kind of uncomfortable about things and stuff, because I don't care how people believe. Just have a civil tongue when you come around me. If you can't do that, then you need to scroll on. You do not have to agree with the way that I think or how I put everything together. That I believe those things were a history lesson and that people didn't read like they were supposed to. There's so many things that you can talk about, like the Aramaic and the Book of Enochian Bible, or it was the Book of Angels. There were several different types of angels. People don't realize that. You know, when you want to talk about giants and Nephilims and stuff, and that's a whole hell. We'd be here for 10 years trying to talk about that shit. Everything intertwines in order to be able to understand what's going on, to be able to come up with a good answer. Is what tribe, we'll just use an example. What tribes were here? How did they practice? What did they practice? What was going on around this area? Was this the way that this was? That a lot of history has a lot of playing a telephone again. Telephone comes in, one person says something, by the time it gets to the 10th person in the line, it's going to be totally different from what it was to begin with.
Right.
The I didn't say that shit effect. So you got to kind of do your own soul searching and make your own thought process up. It's not telling you that you're wrong, but there's always going to be somebody that's going to come in the comments or come on your page and just tell you're wrong. You don't know shit. Well, fuck off. So that's real simple. And you can go find somebody else to harass, but I'm not buying what you're selling, because you are not confident enough to go and do some reading and research before you come at me with anything.
Yeah. Off topic, but what did you get from Sonic for
There was a TikTok. I don't go to Sonic very often. I only go for drinks because I have celiac disease, so there ain't nothing on that menu I can eat.
Mm-hmm.
So there was some TikTok viral where a girl went in and got a Sprite with some of the sweet cream that they put in, which is AK ice cream melted, and some strawberries. Said it's supposed to taste like a strawberry shortcake, which it does.
Ooh, that's awesome. I hadn't heard of that. I'll have to give that a try.
It's pretty decent.
Cool.
Tell them to get a little bit more of the sweet cream in there. I've got a sweet tooth all the time, so
I'm a salty person. I like
them both. When I've had too much sweet, I kind of like put that down, and then I like to go to something else. Now, I don't eat a lot of chocolates. Ew,
pickle slushy.
That is good. Those are good.
Are they?
Pickle snow cones are good.
It sounds interesting.
It's actually really good. You get that salty and that puckery flavor to it. As long as it's dill pickle, not anything else than dill pickle.
I don't like sweet pickles. Dill pickles I can handle. Yeah,
I love dills. I like kosher dills too. I have a pickle problem too. I'm in a pickle group, for Christ's sake. But I wanted to thank you for your time on here.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
You're my guest. Come on.
No, I just wanted to say I really appreciate you asking me to be on here. And I know it really means a lot to me. It really means a lot to me. So thank you, Emmy.
I thank you for trusting me enough that you decided that you would go on something like this, because I know a lot of people don't trust people, especially in this field. And there's a lot of bots and people that spend their day just harassing people. So it takes a lot for you to be able to reach out and actually trust somebody and not feel uncomfortable. And that's what I do.
That might be my downfall one day, is I'm probably uber trusting. But it's good. I think that people in their core are good. And that's I enjoy it. So I'm very happy to be here, and I really, really appreciate you trusting me, because I'm not exactly old hat at this. So
you're learning, and all I can tell you is you keep on the same path, but you need to make sure that you protect you and your children when you go into this field, because you can bring things home, like you said.
Yeah.
And that's the biggest thing, is protecting yourself. Whether you pray to something, whether you sage yourself, whether you black salt lime, whatever you believe in, you need the intent to be able to protect yourself every time that you go out, because you don't want these things coming and making themselves at home in your space. Your space should be your space.
Yeah.
And that
I meant to ask you, when we were talking earlier, you had said that you regularly protect the perimeter of your home. How do you go about doing that?
The way that I do it, because of the way that I believe, I use sage and I use sweetgrass. Mm-hmm. And the way that I go around that, I use my prayer feather, which I need to make a video where I can actually show you how to do it, or we can have another day where I just show you a video and do a demonstration of how you do it. Mm-hmm. But in order to be able to cleanse your home, you need to physically clean it before you start doing the other cleanse. That means clean it up, tidy it up, everything. Then you have to open every one of your windows. And you start from the front of your house, from your mat. I also don't recommend you putting a welcome mat on the front end. You can put whatever the hell you want on there, but don't have the word welcome, because you're not only welcoming strangers, you're welcoming spirit.
Mine says hello. So that's kind of neutral, I guess.
You're safe. When you leave it at hello, you could do the iron nails on the four corners, like Eric said, but you have to do all that stuff after the fact that you cleanse and walk through. It's basically making a barrier. So when you walk through the house, I light my sage, and I have I have my prayer feather and my stuff that I've had for years, the divinity feathers. A Native American actually was made by a Lakota woman, and it's genuine. Everything that I have that I work with is come from a tribe or things like that, because I like to support the Native Americans. I have Native American in me, but I'm not one of these that goes around and tells everybody, oh, I'm 25% so and so and blah, blah, blah. Okay, that's great, Karen. So I don't go and tell people. I'm not going to go into a community tribe and go and tell them, hey, I've got Indian, I'm Native American. I just think it's disrespectful in my aspect, but I just watch the fools, screw themselves.
Yeah.
So I go
I'm
ahead.
sorry, just real quick. So growing up, my dad always told us that we were part Cherokee. He would even take us to Cherokee powwows and stuff like that. Well, a couple years ago, before he passed away, he did a 23andMe, and come to find out the person they thought was Cherokee was actually Pakistani. So
Different time.
it's kind of funny, but anyways, he had kind of based his whole life's identity around that, and no.
But when you do your house, you have all your windows open, because like I told you, you don't want all these things. It's not just spirit or what you bring home. You bring all energy off of people when you go to work or you go out into an open area, and that just densifies in your home. People are like, oh, do you have a ghost? It's not always a ghost, ma'am. I just walked through Walmart through 20 million fucking people and one register open, and I'm an empath. That's like slap in the face 40 times. You have to walk from room to room, go in order of the room, go into every corner and stuff and smoke it out. I'm not talking looking like you went to a Cypress Hill concert. Just come through and you have to say your intent. I need you to leave. Get out of my house. Usually I just say, get the fuck out. That's what I say, but you can find some other way to say it, because I know you don't talk like I do. I talk like that.
I do. I don't know. It's something about this feels like a public setting, and I always get a little bit. I don't know.
I warn people. They know me. If they know me on here, and I make a disclaimer of it, I cuss, and it's just the way it is. It doesn't make me uncouth or any more a lady than anybody else. Is that I have a more colorful and identifiable verbalization of how I want to do it. So call it what you will. You do not have to watch. But I tell things to fuck off and get out of my house. And I mean it with the utmost. That's the utmost respect you're going to get, is get the hell out of here. Get out. You have no bearing over my place. You get out now. And you can use dragon's blood too. Dragon's blood, they have stuff that's dipped. They have sages that are dipped in it. And then you can get the, I have something. You can get the little boxes of incense and stuff like that. I get them at like the metaphysical stores. That's where you're going to find it. Do not go to Mom and John's country diner and gas station on the corner and go and buy that. You have to actually get it from a place that uses these things. Mm-hmm. Eric, you should talk. Have you seen your screen name? Outer Space Motherfucking Boogeyman? I feel like I'm at a Rob Zombie concert.
I saw him in concert. He is really awesome. Good. He is so good.
I've watched him for years, since like years. I was a kid. I was a little kid. And but when you go and do those, you have to go and get out of my home, get out of this house. You have no place, no bearing. Do not cross this threshold. Say whatever you have with the intent that you need to leave. I don't care what direction you go, but find a way out. There's several of them. And you walk through and then get it all out. And you end up back at the back door. Mm-hmm. You have to leave that back door open and walk itself out. And then you basically, you can smudge yourself or pray over yourself or whatever you do. If you want to do a divine jingle, go ahead and do a divine jingle. Just send it on its way. And then you can go back and put the glue. It's like gluing something back together after you do construction after it to make it hold up. Is that you don't want those things to come jumping back in, or that negativity jumping back in. I use black salt. You can use white salt. You can use pink salt. They all have their own issues.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So You go to every windowsill. You don't have to pour half a pound of salt in one area. You just sprinkle enough along the line to make a line, just like you said. Even with the iron nails or the iron stakes that you can get those by railroad track. In some metaphysical stores, they do sell those things that you have to have iron. Iron is a divinity that keeps those things that are negative and evil away. And when they say the four corners of your property, it's the four corners of the property all the way down to the back of your line. So it can't allow certain things to come in. That talks about certain cryptids can't do that, and certain paranormal things cannot do that. So it's your space. Your space should be your space.
Yeah.
And Pete, that's again and along the line, and Eric will tell you, anything that has attachments, if you bring anything and learning into, you got to remember antiques have things that hold on. Mm-hmm. That's why you smudge, cleanse, do whatever. You can put holy water in a spray bottle, or do Florida water. Put it in a spray bottle and spray that stuff. Let it stay outside with the intent of whatever's attached to this needs to leave. Do not bring it in your home. That's how hauntings start. It's like I told you again, it's not always the land like the goopy shit does. It's not just the land. It's not always the house. Nobody was murdered in here. Not everybody that fell dead in this house. That's not always it. Some of it, it's very important in looking in the issue of what's going on, because I can't just do this and expect this thing to go away if I don't know what the hell it is.
Yeah. Can't remember where it was. It might have been Sage Paracon. John Zappis was there talking about everything he does with haunted objects. And he likes to put them out anytime he gets something new or gets an antique of something of unknown origin. He puts it out in the sun for a day or two and kind of lets that cleanse it before he brings it in.
Anything like with crystals and everything, I have a lot of crystals. I have a lot of collection of things because they all have different ways of taking care of you and taking care of it in general and stuff. They have different properties, every single one of them. And there's certain ones that you have to have in certain places, and protection stones and atypical stuff. They get dirty too. Sage gets dirty too. When everything has the ability to get dirty. I have to put my stones in the sun, or I put my selenite. Selenite is amazing. Selenite will clean them on its own. But you can put them in moon water and put them over in the moonlight, or you can put them in the sunlight, and it takes all that off of them. It's equivalent of dusting your house is what it is. So when you salt your areas, that you do whatever you got to do with the intent of divinity of whatever you decide. And please protect my home. Goddess, please protect my home. Those are your boundaries. And that's a big thing that you need to do when you're starting to get into this world and stuff, because it doesn't just affect you, because there's things that are negative that will go towards things that you love to mess with them. And if they can't get your attention here, they come in your dreams, or they'll find a way. Mm-hmm. Because when you open that threshold, it's a yin and yang balance and stuff. You're not just going to get one good. If it gets too good, something's going to come out of balance. And I'm big on people protecting themselves, because I want to teach people the right way. Whatever you do on your own, as I can't walk the path for you, but you better, by God, understand what you're working with. And that falls into another story. If you have a little bit more time, I know you want to get rest soon, but
oh no, you're fine. Go ahead. I have felt myself, I'm sorry, starting to yawn a little bit, but it's not you. You're not boring me. I'm no, I know you're not. Go to bed early.
Like I told you, I had my mother, we went through this issue, her not listening. I had told her, I educated her, everything, that I got her into a spot where I wasn't going to have to go reverb everything again. And I stayed with her after a divorce for a little bit, but me and her don't need to be together. So my daughter decided to stay there until I got my ass together and got everything fixed. And all I did was work. All I did was work and go home. But when I was staying with her at a short period of time, me and my daughter were sharing my daughter's room that she had, and she's always had a room in my mom's house, always. And there was times where I was walking around her house and I could smell perfume, and it wasn't anybody in that house's. And I knew damn well it wasn't, but I still went and backed myself up and went and checked all the perfumes that we had in our house, and it did not smell like that at all. It was very flowery, but it didn't smell like it was from this era or any remote from this area, like this era.
Mm-hmm.
Just, I mean, it literally smelled like a flower. And I was like, okay. You know, the short gusts of wind past me and feeling like someone's standing there and I know you're there. And it would just go.
Did you smell it multiple times?
It was multiple times. Oh, it got worse. Something else came in. And that's where I was beyond livid. I had got my house together, and my mom called me out of nowhere. She's like, Amy, we're backed into a corner in my room. Something's here. And I don't know what the hell it is. I don't know what you or your brother did. I said, I didn't want me. And it was said, I'd be worried about what you did. And my brother and now my brother's a whole different thing. There's been bad stuff that's followed him for a long time. And I think a lot of it was doors she never opened because he was a dumbass. You know, if you want to practice, go ahead, but know what the fuck you're doing, because everything that you touch follows everybody else. And it's like a domino effect, and it lingers, and there's an essence that's left around that leaves a bad taste in your mouth. But when my mom calls me and my kid's backed into a corner, she wasn't even in junior high yet, almost. Probably around your son's age or a little older, not very much older, about 12. And I said, do what? And I came on hell on 2 wheels and stuff and brought my stuff. I went and got her, grabbed her, and snatched my daughter and pulled her out of the house. And told my mother, basically, me and you are going to have a fucking talk. And I don't know what the fuck's going on in here, but it was so heavy and it was so negative. And it prominently was in my brother's room, which I figured that was him. And I pushed everything out, went and opened windows, and I sent it out. And I mean, I screamed with 7 bells. I screamed it out, got it the fuck out of here, get it out, get out. You had no business being here. This is not your fucking space. Get the fuck out of here. And it started to lighten up, literally. I've had to go and help people with things. And there was an old story about my mom that I was told by family members that her and a cousin of ours were fucking with a Ouija board when they were younger, and they never closed the door because they thought it was fucking fun. And she's had nothing but issues and negativity, and some of her attitude, I think that's in life, a lot of that has to do with her fucking choices. And that one being it, but how long it had been attached to her.
Yeah.
It was surreal. I'd never been, I was livid to the point where if I get silent and I'm mad, the best thing for you is to stay back from me, because I will probably lay somebody out really fast, especially when you involve my child.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I said, you're going to sit down and we're going to have a talk, and you're going to fucking talk to me. I said, I've been trying to tell you this shit for years. My brother's been trying to tell you this shit for years. I said, this is long enough with this shit. And I was already I was a little over in my early 30s. And she sat down and she talked to me, and I helped her. I was letting her, and I said, I don't want to have this conversation about me, you thinking that I'm the devil or something, or that I need to find Jesus, because you haven't found him yet either, and neither has anybody else. I said, somebody that's swift tongue about telling people about what they need to do. You need to mind your business, and you need to quit fucking with shit that you don't know. And you need to quit thinking that I don't know what you did. I said, there's been many times where, me and my brother had to take care of each other. And my mom wasn't a drug addict. She wasn't an alcoholic. One of the worst things is an alcoholic and a drug addict have potential of being better than what they are. Somebody that's sober and like that, that's just, there's nothing. But my brother's been so negative. Everything has failed for him. I've seen this. I've tried to talk to him, I think, and where I think his problem was, I think a lot of his problem was when he drowned when he in front of me when he was 2. A babysitter left him by the pool before in the 80s, before they were pushing a bunch of kids. Not when you have a pool, that it's an actual legal crime if you don't have a fence around your pool in some states. And he was 2, and I was 6. And I did not swim very well. People talk about, oh, you can't remember stuff when you're 5. I remember shit when I was 5 years old. I was 6 years old when that happened. And I remember the pool. I could tell you that was just a regular underground pool, the no fancy ass ones that all the rich people had in the neighborhood, because the neighborhood that we went to and stuff, the lady that took care of us, her parents lived in one of the fucking richest neighborhoods in the 80s that you can live in. It was a high dollar neighborhood with them houses. And at the time, this is before my mom married my stepdad. She was just now starting to date him. Mm-hmm. And we lived in an apartment, lived off one salary. She didn't get any child support from his dad. But the pool was round. I remember turning, and she had went inside so that she would be back. I remember that. And I turned around, and he was trying to play with the little balls because they had the big beach balls and stuff. He can't swim. He was a baby. Yeah. And I turned around, and he was gone. And I looked everywhere, and then I knew exactly where he was. He was already at the very bottom of the pool.
Right. It's really interesting that this is it's kind of a similar story between you and I. It didn't happen when I was young, but my daughter, Aurora, she actually drowned in a pool when she was 2. And we were able to bring her back. I wasn't. So I was out on a sailboat at my mom's house. She lives on this creek. And I had left her in a pool. It had a gate, but she was on the inside of the gate with my sister and her boyfriend, who happened to be an EMT. Like, it just happened. He just happened to be there. And anyways, they weren't paying attention for about 2 minutes, and they turned around, and she was face down in the pool. And he did CPR and brought her back and got her to the hospital. And I didn't get to see her. They had already taken her away by the time I got back from the boat, because it was a whole ordeal. I had to swim in. But yeah, so that happened, and I think I still have a lot of trauma, some PTSD from that.
I think and don't get me wrong, and this is just stuff that I'm feeling off of you. You have a lot of guilt, and you blame yourself for things.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I should never have left her alone. And my sister, oh my God, my poor sister, she has a kid now, and she is just, I love her to death. She's so overprotective of that child. I
just wanted to tell you and stuff that accidents happen.
Yeah.
And it wouldn't have changed the outcome if you decided that you weren't going to leave. I mean, that wasn't something that was your fault. What happened with John, she left us by the pool to go and talk to her boyfriend on the phone and go take a shower. Because I remember running in the house because I couldn't get him because I couldn't swim very well to go get her. And she only had top of a bathing suit on and was on the phone. And I kept telling her, John Paul's in the pool. She's like, what's he getting? Just John Paul's in the pool. And she sent me, and I remember running out the door and my feet were wet because I was in the waiting part of it trying to get to him. There was no way. I was too little. And there was no way. He was over by the diving board and under the diving board on the bottom. And she pulled him out and he was limp. I had to run to the neighbors next door. And I remember running on the concrete and my feet were wet and I slipped and fell before I got to the door. And the people came running to come and help. My mother was working at the hospital when this happened. Mm-hmm. No, she was on shift at the hospital. She got a call from the ED, them telling her, you need to come down here. She said, I made her tell me the rest of it when I got probably about 35 years old, because I wanted to know after. I don't remember anything after that. All I remember is the ambulance coming and that he was lifeless. He's purple.
Yeah.
There was no color in him.
Yeah, I just remember how cold Aurora felt. She felt so cold. You know, she hadn't been breathing for almost 2 minutes. And yeah, it's there's a lot of guilt that comes with that, for
sure. She felt guilty. I mean, I don't ever want to imagine that. As there's a point to this story, is that people that have near-death experiences, sometimes they're not the same when they come back here.
My daughter is incredibly artistic, and I don't know where she got that. And I feel like her creativity and her that side of her really stems from that experience. It's in some way. I don't know. No one else in the family is like that. So
she told me that he came in, he was lifeless, and some of it they were saying that it was somewhat the way he should have had brain damage and he didn't, and it was almost like his asthma saved him because he had weak lungs. He's still got weak lungs. He's got asthma, but he smokes like a freight train, like my mom. But he's always been like that. But he was a sick baby. I mean, it wasn't just that. He was sick and pneumonia and all kinds of shit. And that boy is just, it's like something had put something on him. And I'm not saying that's not what happened. I said, there's everything that could go wrong with that kid. It is. And he's almost 40 now. You know, life has not been real great. And I think a lot of it still has to enhance with paranormal because things that are around him, it follows him. And I don't know if it's that he's gotten comfortable. It's almost with the term of getting comfortable with your demons. Literally.
Yeah. Yeah. Mm.
But it's just, those are things I put them on here, and I hope people actually go back and they listen, and which they will be. I have a bunch of people that are going to. It's Friday night, so a lot of people are out and about. Okay. All right, Erica.
Erica.
Okay, Erica. Sorry.
Oh, it was nice to have you on here, Eric.
But it's different instances and stuff. I've had positive things happen and I've had negative things happen, and that we can do on a different show and go over that. I want to see you've got a lot of potential and you're already on the right path. And with the attitude that you have in life and stuff, you're going to go places where people didn't think that you would be able to. All I can advise, and this is what I'll leave you off with. What I can advise with you is to please just don't pay attention to the naysayers.
Yeah.
And there's always going to be somebody. Just block and delete it and get rid of it. Send it on its way. And that you have every right to be in this field and start somewhere. We all started somewhere. It does not make me any better than you because I've done this for years. And I mean years, over 30 years. It doesn't make me anything better than you. Is that I learned something and things evolve over time in the way that the aspect of paranormal world is and the cryptid world is and understanding. And I will leave you with that. Would you like to finish off with getting your email out and how they can actually find you?
You're a sweetheart, Emmy. Thank you. Yeah, so if you go to paranormaltimes.org, that is the name of the website. There is a contact form on there. There's all of the links to my social. My email, though, if anyone wants it, is just Julia Ratliff at paranormaltimes.org. So yeah, and we're on all the different social platforms except for Snapchat because I just didn't feel the need to be on there. And again, the website paranormaltimes.org.
Well, I was glad having you, and it was really nice meeting you, and I hope to collaborate with you again on another podcast.
Oh, it'd be great. I'd love to get back on here.
That would be great.
Absolutely.
And I'll just y'all guys, y'all got to go and check her out on TikTok and all the other platforms. If you're wanting to see what she's about, go on TikTok on the Paranormal Times. Just put it in the search engine, and you're going to find her. It was great having you, hun, and I hope you have a good night.
Thank you. Thank you. You too.
Bye.